Okay, we're continuing with the book here, The Holy Grail of Wisdom Quotes by P. Rogers. We're going in alphabetical order. The next is James Russell Lowell. He was one of the fireside poets in America, sort of the earliest American poets in the 1800s, trying to compete with the poets of Europe. He was a poet in the Romantic Age. He lived from 1819 to 1891, graduate of Harvard College, Harvard Law School. He was contemporaries like with Henry Wadsworth Longfellow, John Greenleaf Whittier, Ralph Waldo Emerson, later Edgar Allan Poe. Here's one of his poems I like. Once to every man and nation comes the moment to decide, in the strife of truth with falsehood, for the good or evil side. For some great cause, some great decision, offering each the bloom or blight, and the choice goes by forever twixt the darkness and that light. So basically, you got to decide, what are you going to do with your life? And I think a lot of young people, they get mixed up and they get caught up in the nonsense, drinking alcohol, smoking MJ, and they just sort of, they waste their life with trivia versus, it's good to study a lot. You want to study history. You want to study your great ancestors. I believe it's much more important to study the history of art and literature and culture than it is the other type of history. So in school, they make history suck. All they talk about is the dates of battles and conflicts, and it's real boring and it sucks. But when you study the great people of history, then you see role models, and that's good for you. So you pick positive role models, and then you also want to have negative role models. Like I have a negative role model, was a friend of mine. He's a doctor. And, he was married with 3 kids. I know he loved his wife. And then she cheated on him and they got divorced. And because he had been moonlighting at 2 jobs, he was making a lot of money. But then he had to pay alimony based on the money. So divorce is totally unfair. So here's his wife, acting like a whore, cheating on him. And then even though she committed adultery, ruined everything, she still gets to keep the house and she still gets to keep the kids. That's completely unfair. All this stuff about why should she keep the life she was accustomed to? She did not fulfill her role as a wife. But the legal system's designed to do that. We won't talk about it anymore. But what I'm basically saying is he was one of my anti-role models. I won't go into that in any more detail. But I like this. You have to pick a choice. You say, look, I only got one life. What am I going to do? What's the best I could do? The right question to ask yourself is, what's the best I could do based on my ability, my interest, my resources, my context? And I think if you do that, not just for the sake of being a better person in this world, you'll be happier because if you've done the best you could, then you don't have so many regrets. The regrets are the things that bother you more than anything. Okay, the next one with James Russell Lowell. The better part of every man's education is that which he gives himself. Yeah, that's what you remember the most is the stuff, the knowledge you sought on your own. Books are the bees that carry the pollen from one mind to another. Silence is sorrow's best food. Yeah, a lot of times it's best to just shut up and get on with your life when you're sad, because if you talk about how sad you are, you can talk about it sometimes for the benefit of educating the people around you so they can avoid the mistakes you made. But you need to also just get on with your life. And again, it depends on the thing. Sometimes, too, you don't want to talk about it because then people just rub it in more, It depends if you're around your friends or people who are not your friends. But there's something to be said. You want to get on and look to the future. You don't, the whole psychoanalysis stuff is bad. Keep obsessing about a previous problem and then, blame all your family members. Then you make each other not get along, and that's not good. Versus you sort of say, well, I messed up. I should have took a extra year in college, eligibility year, redshirt year, but it's too late. All right. Truth is forever on the scaffold and wrong forever on the throne. Yeah, that's kind of sad, but there's truth in that. That big money and power and evil often go together to exert total control. And meanwhile, the people doing good stuff are just the weak little proles. They are slaves who fear to speak for the fallen and the weak. Yeah, it's not that easy to defend the fallen and the weak. You should do it when you can, but it's not always as easy as we'd like it to be. You do the best you can within your context. Our American Republic will endure only as long as the ideas of the men who founded it continue dominant. Yeah, America was founded to be a Christian country, and if it loses its Christian ethics, then it's just going to be, a tyrannical rule by force. There's no other way around that. James Russell Lowell. Wealth is an excellent thing, for it means power, it means leisure, and it means liberty. As far as I'm concerned, the best thing about having money is you can get other people to do stuff. And if you can get other people to do enough stuff, then you're more freed up to do the stuff that you want to do. So that's a big deal. Like, I wish that I was more wealthy because then I could retire. And if I could retire, then I could really do what I want to do, which is medical and nutritional research. Okay? Conventional medicine, I'm grateful to it. It pays the bills. You know, you sit around, taking care of all these boring diseases all day long. Fatty liver, hypertension, diabetes, coronary artery disease, potential cancer nodules, which usually are benign. You get paid. Whereas you do all this YouTube stuff, you help people, but I don't get any money from this. But I like it. I know it's my destiny my calling to do it. So that's the benefit of money. Money is the ability to get other people to do stuff. So I wish I had focused on that more when I was young. I just took it for granted I'd be rich. And I did make tons of money, but my wife threw it all in the garbage can because I was smarter than my dad, and my dad was pretty rich. Okay, anyways, the next one here, John Lubbock. He lived from 1834 to 1913. He said, "A kind word gives more pleasure than a present." Yeah, if you think somebody deserves a compliment, give the compliment in front of other people so other people can hear it. That'll make them even happier. As long as it's genuine, then it's good. Okay, sunsets are so beautiful that it almost seems we are looking through the gates of heaven. The greatest mistake of education is that we strain the memory instead of cultivating the mind. Yeah, that's true. Really, to help a student, to help anybody learn anything, you build up a system of knowledge and you give them the key information so that they can then go on their own. Like, as soon as you tell somebody atherosclerosis is a blood clot, anything that causes blood to clot causes atherosclerosis. Once they know that, boom, they can read and they can figure out all kinds of things. So you've given them the concept that enables them to see all the other information and figure out what's useful or not. John Lubbock continues, "There are 3 great questions in life which we have to answer over and over again. Is it right or wrong? Is it true or false? Is it beautiful or ugly? And our education should help us answer those questions." Yep, that's pretty good. Next, we're Lucan. I think Lucan was an old Roman philosopher guy. Just a couple points of this. He says, "No man is innocent when his opponent is the judge." Yeah, a lot of scientists like Semmelweis and others, when they're being harassed by people who don't want their new idea, they just get harassed. It doesn't matter how good their idea is. That's why you have to have courage, that you're willing to take some SHIT to do something good and right. No one chooses the unfortunate as his friends. Yeah, so when you get blocked, shadow banned, ostracized, etc., that doesn't make you popular. But as long as you say, "I answer to Jesus Christu," then it gives you more strength to do the right thing despite the social consequences. Okay, the next one, Clare Booth Luce. She lived from 1903 to 1987. She had some political job for a while. She was very smart. She graduated, I think, first in her high school class. She was a very beautiful lady. And she married a very rich man. And then she married another very rich man. So she got a lot of money from marriage. And that sort of springboarded her career. She was a little bit of an actress for a little while. So, it's nice to get some money with marriage. Men often marry somebody they're attracted to who's relatively poor. My wife was super poor when I married her. We all make mistakes. But I've also seen some men married very rich women, and that elevated their career. Like George Washington, the guy who founded the USA, had a very rich wife that he married. Other men have done the same thing. Cicero, the greatest of all Romans, he married a very rich woman, and that helped his career. And I've seen other men do the same thing. I myself could have married this really rich girl, and she was actually very nice. I would have been fine with her. I was a lot more attractive to my wife, and my wife was close to me. I was working around her at the time I married her, versus this other girl had now become far, but like her dad owned a bank or something. I could be retired right now. How would have my life turned out if I'd have gone down that path? Who knows? I'd be a lot more free financially. Anyways, Clare Booth Luce, she said, "No good deed goes unpunished." That's a good quote. "Courage is the ladder on which all the other virtues mount." That's a good quote. "Much of global thinking is really global-owning. The best defense against a powerful and positive dynamic ideology is neither verbal attack or criticism," which are useful, but to set up an equally powerful and dynamic ideology against it. Yeah, the great ideologies of our time, there's really only 2. There is communism and there is Christianity. Those are the choice that we have to make. And if you don't think you have to choose, then you have chosen communism. You have to defend Christianity. You have to promote Christianity because it is weak and it is dying. And if you don't do that, it will die. It will lose. And if it dies and it loses, there will be slavery. Because communism means slavery. It's just a euphemism to call it communism or socialism. That's what it means. And that's a very simple thing. Anybody that knows history knows what I'm saying is exactly correct. But it's weird. People don't get that. They've got public school induced, confusion. Okay, the next guy we'll briefly talk about is Frank Luntz. He's like a speechwriter guy. He said, what people want is optimism. They want positive change. Only 25% of Americans are college graduates. Be as brief as possible. Offer something new. Appeal to aspirations. It's not what you say, it's what people hear. A compelling story can be more emotionally compelling than dry recitation of truth. Try to make it visual. When you use the words of your opponents, you are accepting their definitions and by extension, their conclusions. Yeah, so what I would say is do your best to not get pulled into that game where they try to force you to use their vocabulary, your opponent in a debate, for example. Just turn the table and switch it to your vocabulary. Just be aware of the games they play, because a lot of times, I hate to say it, but bad, evil people are pretty smart, and they know the game they're playing. So you have to be willing to play it. And what I've learned too is you have to hardline. If you wimp, you'll get pulled by the Overton window, so to speak, in their direction. You have to say, no, you are full of shit. And the reason you're full of shit is because of this, and this. You have to be that way or you will lose. I believe me, I've been in tons of debates, tons of arguments, tons of comment sections back and forth. And being a wimp, you will lose, okay? And there are times when I, inadvertently was a little bit not as assertive as I should have been, and I didn't come out of it as well as I should have. So we'll just leave it at that. In all my years of conducting polls, dial sessions, and focus groups, I found again and again that nobody reads. That's kind of sad, and I have found that for the most part with most of my doctor colleagues, because I talk to them a lot of times on the phone. Most of them don't read. And men read a lot more than women. Women are very often busy with their kids, but even the men don't read that much, most of them. The real smart ones read more. That's actually, to me, a kind of a gauge of how smart an adult is. Do they still continue to educate themselves somehow? It doesn't have to be literature, but they got to read something. They have to have some ongoing interest in something. And I think the best reading is to read for a goal. Because like my dad was a smart guy, but he just read randomly. He enjoyed literature, poetry, music, but he would just sort of randomly read stuff. He didn't have any goals intellectually, whereas I have a goal. I'm going to figure out diabetes. I'm going to figure out autoimmune disease. I'm going to figure out the Middle Ages. I want to figure out the Romans. I want to figure out the ancient Greeks. And because I have a goal, I'll read a whole bunch of books on that subject in one time when I'm interested in it, let's say for a span of 6 months or a year or something, and then I'll know it pretty well. So anyways, that's Frank Luntz. I think that's all I got for today. Yep, I hope you found that helpful.